Well, this is going to be the first of our voice acting panelists. And these are like three very famous characters from Robotech. You have Dan Woren. Dan Woren, the voice of Reynolds. And you have Mike Reynolds, the voice of Dolza.
Demonstrate this kissing at once or I'll kill you all.
Yeah!
And then finally we have David Millbern, who played Louie Nichols.
Now what?
Now they will engage in an in-depth discussion as to what they did on Robotech and their work in the voice acting and regular acting.
Oh, sure.
And we'll just kind of pass it to them.
You just want to hear a general biography or something, and what we've been doing, or what we're... is there any specific questions about the series? Come on. Somebody help. No question. Yeah.
How did you get approached for these roles?
Pardon me?
How did you get approached for these roles?
Well, the way I got approached, I was doing something else at Intersound at the time when Carl Masek started the Robotech series, and he just asked me if I wanted to be involved. In fact, I think, didn't he send out a call to, he got just about every writer of animation in town together, and we had a great big meeting. There must have been about 30 people, 30 writers there, and we all had to demonstrate that, and we all auditioned for voices. A lot of us who do voices also write and direct, and I think, as I remember, I wrote about 10 of the episodes, and that was how it all came about. That's how it usually comes about. They just send out a cattle call. But you guys want to...
Well, this was the first voice job I ever had gotten. I mean, this was the first one. I knew Steve Kramer, who was, and his wife Melora. They were kind of professional friends of mine as well as personal friends. And Steve called me and said, do you want to come down and audition for this role? I think you'd be right for it. So I did. And, you know, it's just like anything else. If you know the industry, you audition for things and you forget about them, you know, because that's the best way. You can't hold on to them and think, oh, God, did I get it? Did I get it? So a couple days later, I'm sure he called me and said that I got the role. And what was really interesting for me, having this be my first animation voice job, was that when I got the role, then I got the call to come in and do the work. And I remember even to this day that, I think I was telling someone out there when I was signing, it was so interesting because when you're in the studio and Carl was there and we're watching the piece, and he said to me, okay, now here comes your character. Here he comes. Here he comes. Here he's on the screen. And it was the first time that I had ever seen, you know, the end result before, you know, I had put my heart and my soul into it. And it was so interesting because there he was just walking around doing his thing without the heart, the soul, the breath, you know, the voice. And I really, you know, I had the sense that I gave him life, you know, I gave him life even though I could see my life in front of me. It was really kind of this weird virtual experience. And I guess I'm sure these guys have done it a long, long time, but at that time, that was my first opportunity to see something that had no voice, no life, no breath, walking around in silence, and then for me to add to it. And it was a phenomenal experience for me, because it was the first. It's like the first time you do anything.
I guess
for me, doing Roy Fokker, I had been doing voiceover things and animation things for about maybe 5 years prior to that, and he was one of the first real hero types that I was able to play, and so that was quite a bit of fun to do something that that was a good guy and had the character having honor and really considering, you know, the ramifications of things that he did, being involved in warfare and maintaining a relationship and all these things. It was quite a bit of fun to do that and try to really make it as believable as possible, because the scripts were written very well. Even some of the ones Mike wrote, and in fact all of the ones Mike wrote actually. And so it was a lot of fun to not knowing what's going to come up in the next script and what's going to happen. Of course, some of us died a little before our times, we feel. I won't name any names, but it was a very good experience and quite a bit of fun to do. Yeah, questions?
Yeah, I would like to know what kind of personal idiosyncrasies or, you know, quirks or anything that you put to each of your characters. Sure.
I've been talking.
Why do you always throw it to me?
You don't know on the left.
I don't know that I put any personal idiosyncrasies into Dolza, other than I made my voice a little bit heavier than it normally is.
Is that possible?
Actually, it was down here. If the Zentradi are to prevail, the Macronians must be destroyed. Sort of like that. But as far as any personal idiosyncrasies, no. I didn't. How about you?
I think the scripts were so good, you know, I mean, they could be taken on so many different levels, and as in any acting, you get your cue and your keys to the character from the script. So we got the scripts, and we saw what our character was doing, and we got an idea of you know, how we felt about things, how we felt about the world and the environment, and then you just bring those elements of yourself to the character. And then, like I was saying before, it was so interesting with this type of work, you get to see the visual before. So you know, kind of, that's another key. I mean, when you're doing a film, when you're actually on camera in live action, you don't get to see the ambience and see yourself, and unless you go to the dailies, you know, but then that's after the fact too, you're already on camera. But in animation, you get to see the entire environment, and then you have the script, so that then you can really bring even more to yourself. And I think that's why Robotech was really more special, because the scripts were good, and the actors that they assembled were people that wanted to give and wanted to really go that extra mile. A lot of times you don't find that.
And the same with me, there wasn't really specific idiosyncrasies, I think, that I brought to the role, except that the relationship that Roy had with Rick, big brother, little brother kind of a thing. For me, not having any smaller brothers or sisters, it was kind of an interesting thing to kind of approach that and really examine it from a reality standpoint again as to how I would feel about his abilities as a pilot and coaching him along, and my own arrogance at not admitting he was getting as good as me possibly, and you know, those kind of things. So there wasn't really any vocal idiosyncrasies necessarily, like unlike Mike, who got to go deeper. Does that answer your question okay? Great.
One other thing I'd like to say on that is, I suppose every actor has his own way of getting into things, but what I do when I see a character is try to imagine how that character sounds, and then I pretend like I'm him. You know, I actually saw myself as a 50-foot man while I was doing Dolza.
Wow.
Other questions?
Well, that's
That's, you know, the imagination, you know. I mean, what we're talking about here is imagination, and you have to imagine yourself with I imagine myself with red hair, you know, and glasses. And you just feel it, you know. It's kind of the fun of acting, you know. A lot of people say, well, how do I learn how to act? And I teach some classes, and some of the parents go, well, should my little Johnny, should little Susie become an actor? What should we do, you know? And I say, turn them loose in the backyard. Because that's how your backyard becomes your army, becomes your jungle, becomes whatever, and they develop, children develop imaginations. And as actors, that's what you pull upon. You pull from your imagination over and over and over again, job after job. And if you don't have that, if you don't have the opportunity as a child to develop your imagination, that's why a lot of child stars are no longer around, because they were never allowed to be children and to develop their imagination.
Another thing that is unique about our particular business, not all actors can do it. I know some wonderful actors that I would bring in when I was directing something like this, and they try, you know, we try them for about an hour, and finally, this one particular guy, one of my best friends, a terrific actor, and I brought him in several times to do a voice of a character, and he finally said, Mike, I can't do it. Because you had so much to think about. For one thing, you have this code that's rolling over in front of you, and it's broken down to frames. There's frames, seconds, minutes, and hours. And you have to be ready when the exact frame comes up. You have to be ready to start talking, and you've got to match what you're saying to the mouth that you're looking at there. That's the second thing. Third thing is you've got to be reading it. You don't memorize it. You're standing there reading it on a music stand in front of you, or a podium, or whatever. And fourth, you've got to act the part. So you're doing all these things at once, and it is very, very difficult for a lot of people. We that do it all the time are very fortunate, because there's actors, believe it or not, that are better than we are. They can't handle it.
One other thing to add to what Mike was saying about the difficulties, when we were doing this, and now there's what's called the beeps or beep tones, and so you actually have like a metronome letting you know when you're supposed to start speaking. So technically, you can get away with not looking at the time code, because you listen, and it goes beep, 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 and you speak on the imaginary fourth beat. However, when we were doing this, there were no beeps either. So we had to look at the time code, like Mike was saying, look at the mouth as it started to open, make sure that we opened our mouths at that time, and finished at the right time, so that the mouth didn't keep going like this, and we had already stopped, and you see a lot of things like that, I imagine. A lot of poorly dubbed features and animation, for that matter. And then also, you had to act it. And so all of those levels, it's not an easy job. It's a wonderful job, and we are very fortunate to be able to do it, and obviously do it fairly well, or there wouldn't be anybody here. So you know, it's a great pleasure.
He is a graduate of the Kirk Douglas School of Modesty in
Thank you.
It's another thing on, just before we get away from that subject, it's also a real team effort. The writer has got to write it. He's got to watch the mouths. He's sitting at home in front of a VCR, and he's going frame by frame, watching the mouths and fitting the words out of his imagination that have to fit the Japanese translation or whatever it is. Yes, what?
As actors, were you able to do body language?
Well, yeah, you
Oh,
can.
absolutely.
Yeah. Sure.
It's necessary.
But from the standpoint of the writer, or the actor rather, the writer is, and we get to know the people, to have, to get to the point where we have people in mind for a specific role that we're writing. And if somebody, for example, is writing something for me, they know that my delivery is slower than most people. And so it's got to be written in my style of speech. Steve Kramer, for example, he talks about 3 times as fast as I do. And if I'm writing something that I know Steve Kramer is going to do, I'll sit there and I'll go while I'm writing it, and try to match the labials and the explosives and what have you to the lip movement on the screen. And then after I've got it finished, I usually add 3 syllables, because Steve is going to say, "Oh, why can't Steve write this faster?" You know, and he does the same thing for me in opposite. He has to creep to write something for me.
Is it very difficult to fit all of the emotion that a live action actor would have to fit into just a voice?
It's one of the real challenges of doing this kind of work, I think. And again, we're so fortunate to be able to do it. But it is definitely a challenge. And I mean, in watching these, I'm sure when you see something that doesn't quite match or the emotion doesn't seem to be there, it just jumps out at you. So that's also the job of a good director when we're doing the sessions, is to say, you know, right at that point, I think you need to bring that up a little more, because if you look at the character, he's just, over what's just happened, he needs to be a little more angry there or whatever, and you bring it up, and it definitely makes a difference. So yeah, it's one of the challenges, again, of doing this kind of work. David?
Also, too, in animation, because you only have your voice, there's a tendency to want to put more into it, and that's called for, but then it also has to be honest. So there are a lot of different variables that come into animation, voicing an animated character. You want to play with your voice, and you want to give it because that's what you're using, but then you also have to be honest, because that's what good acting is. It's honest and it's believable. And that's what also made Robotech so wonderful, is that it was so honest, that it was dealing with adult issues and also available, reachable for children to enjoy too.
Any real life romance between you and Claudia Gray?
I think Claudia is happy without me. I think Claudia has someone else in her life. Just never happened. It couldn't be much to my chagrin, actually. I'm just doing a check. Who played Claudia, just to see if anyone knew.
Was Claudia the black girl? Oh, that was Diana Morris. Huh? I thought that was Diana. Oh, yeah. She didn't use her real name. That's Greg Morris's daughter that did that character.
I was wondering, like, the 3 of you, like, ever get in the middle of a conversation, and all of a sudden the person you're talking to stops and they'll go, "Good grief, Louie, or Roy, or Dolza."
That happened to me one time on a train. I decided I'd like to take a nice long train ride. So I took a train to Seattle and got a roomette in the home of Gillin, and I was sitting in the dining car and I was talking to a guy, and he said, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you ever do any cartoons?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You've done Robotech, haven't you?" Yeah, I did, as a matter of fact. He says, "You're Dolza." That's the only time anybody ever literally nailed it without my telling them.
We do it amongst ourselves sometimes, if we're just having conversations or whatever, and accuse each other of lapsing into a character. It definitely has.
Okay, let's say from your death scene, with body on the guitar,
Right.
was there anything that you said that was like dubbed out, or any of you guys, you were saying something that they got cut out, or something like that? That was like animation or anything like that?
As I recall, as I recall, again, this is like 10 years ago, and so trying to bring that back specifically, I don't think so. I think, again, we were stuck with trying to match what the flaps of Roy as the character, match the mouth movements to what was going on. So I don't, maybe something directed, I don't remember who directed that episode, for sure. So that may be something to check with that director. It might have been Carl Masek. I don't know who that was. So I don't have anything cut out. I think we were just basically dealing with what we had on screen and working with it that way. It's possible, though.
I just remembered also, you were asking about characteristics, because we were all creating these characters, from giving them life from nothing. Louie's voice, it was a higher register, and Louie's voice cracked a lot. And I remember Carl coming in one thing, we like that, put more into it. So then I tried to crack it, every time he talked, there was that, at least I wanted not to overdo it, but there was that I wanted to get to that point, and Louie also was very emotional all the time, and he just believed in what he wanted to do, and he was so right. It's a lot of those episodes I had huge monologues, when I was developing that pupil's pistol, and describing that to Dana, it was just incredible. My mouth just went, I don't know, we used to do these a lot of times in the middle of the night. We'd call it in at like 1 a.m. in the morning, and we'd do an episode from 1 a.m. to 2, and sometimes you just turn it over to God and say, help me get through this, because the technician's there and the director's there, and it's 1 a.m. in the morning, and you just turn it over and somehow you get through.
The good old days.
Yeah, right.
Do you have a question back here?
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier that one of the women used a different name for Robotech. I've noticed whenever I hear your voices, not usually specifically the Robotech voice actor in general, I'll hear your voices on another program, and a lot of times it's a completely different name. Is this a very common thing in the voice acting industry? If it is, why?
Oh, me, huh? Shall I answer that? You think so? Truthfully? Yeah, it is common. A lot of the times, many of the actors that work in this field are union actors, and some of the projects they're working on are not necessarily union projects. So, and that's not to suggest anyone here fits that particular situation. But based on that, and based on the names, possibly the show becoming very popular, the names becoming something that everyone knows, and then all of a sudden it gets back to the union that you're doing non-union work, and your name is there in bold print, and then you get severely punished for doing such. People sometimes tend to change their names, and that's the truth.
That's what's so ironic about this. I mean, the following here, we're so pleased, and nobody knows our real names. it's kind of ironic. I use my real name.
This particular series, it was a non-union endeavor, and if we used any names at all, they were non-defunct. I don't remember getting any credit for acting. I see my writing credits all the time on Robotech. I don't think they list the actors.
Yeah. On some of the episodes, there's a run sheet of 12 or 15 different panels.
If you look at some of those female nom de plumes, those names, where they get those names? They just are really strange sounding names from the adult entertainment industry. I think no, you find those names elsewhere. You don't find them on cartoons. Look at it.
questions? Yes, sir.
Earlier, I think David mentioned that the voices are done in serial and stuff. Like even if there's a conversation between two people, like you might go into the studio separately and record it that way. It seems like it'd be a lot easier to act if you could sort of play off each other. Why is it done in serial rather than in parallel?
It's a very good question, and sometimes, not too often, but sometimes you will go in as a pair if you're doing a scene like that. But generally, because of the possibility of someone making an error, and sometimes what happens, and invariably it seems to happen once in a session for everyone, is you get stuck on something, and your mouth doesn't work, or something just cannot get out of your mouth onto the microphone. It's just you go over it, and it's 6 takes, 8 takes, 10 takes, whatever. And if you're in there with another person, as opposed to just by yourself, then you start to develop the pressure of, geez, I'm holding this person up, and I'm screwing up, and time is ticking by, and then you get more tongue-tied, and time continues to tick, and you know, it's based on time as well. So that's part of it, most definitely.
The operative word being time. Time in our business is definitely money. I have been on jobs. One particular one I remember was also done at Intersound, where it was a live action thing done in Italian, and we were dubbing the voices onto that, and the producer, for some strange reason, he brought everybody in every day. And we were all sitting in the lunchroom practically all day long. Do you remember that? There must have been 25 actors working on it. And all of them were getting paid by the hour. And he'd bring one person into the studio and he'd say, okay, we'll run your lines. And he'd run that guy's lines, and that guy might be in there for 2 hours doing his lines, and there's 25 actors sitting in the lunchroom on the clock. And so that is the most important consideration. They've got to schedule you at the most economical rate. So more often than not, you'll be called in individually to do your part. Even if you're doing a fight scene with somebody, it's more than likely you'll be in there doing it all by yourself. Now, wall sessions are different. Wall session is background noise, talk and shouting and whatever.
Yeah, go ahead and explain that, yeah, just so everybody knows. Everybody know where that term came from, basically?
I just want to follow up.
Okay, great, we'll go up on that.
And also too, and I think this is a very good question because, you know, we all know, or maybe you don't, acting is reacting. So in a film or TV, you're actually, you know, reacting off of your co-star or whatever. But how this is done and what we described is you're not only looking at the time code, you're seeing the picture, you're also reading your lines because you hadn't memorized your lines. So to add one more ingredient into that, which would be reacting and looking at the other actress or actor, there just wouldn't be, you wouldn't get the work done. You wouldn't be able to see the time code, see the picture, read your line, and also react. So therefore, it's virtually always done singularly, and that's one of the things you give up. You don't get to react like TV and film acting or stage acting, where you're reacting off the other actor. You give that up because there's just too much else that you have to keep in mind.
Along the same line, one other nice thing is that periodically you'll be brought in to do your character, but the other characters have already been recorded, which is really nice because then you actually have something to work with and work off of instead of being the first one in and just having to lay down your stuff and give it everything you got and hope that it's good enough. So yeah, that's a nice little bonus sometimes when you get in and they've already recorded the people you're having dialogue with, so you really have something to work off of.
Conversely, it's dreadful to be the first one.
Yeah, it's a real challenge to be number one, to go in and just do it. Because you just go, God, if I just had that little bit of something there, you're going, and they really play up with that.
That's where you rely on the director too.
Right. Or just to go back to the walla thing, so you're going to hear this term every once in a while, you may have heard it before. A walla is the sounds in the background. If you're in a restaurant, the people talking softly in the background eating. If you're on the street, people walking by, talking, yelling, hailing a bus or a cab or whatever. but the term itself is derived from wah, 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 which actually I guess used to be done to make those background sounds. People would just say wah, 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 and it would sound like people talking in the background. Am I right?
Or a piece of character.
Well,
Am I lying?
you're close, but even in the old days, I've been around for a long time. And even when we were doing radio drama years ago, it isn't exactly wah, wah, wah. It's I don't know, somebody thought that that's what it sounded like, but if an actor ever actually stood there and said, wah, 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 he just run out on his ear.
Don't believe a word I tell you.
He's been a liar all his life. Yes.
How much of your personal careers have skyrocketed since Robotech or afterwards that actually got you the parts?
Skyrocketed.
Could you define skyrocket?
I mean, because I know David's doing a movie now. How often there's people that come and walk up and say, hey, I remember you did Dolza on Robotech. Would you like to do so-and-so?
I guess we've all done movies, haven't we?
Yeah, but not too many of them come based on being recognized from Robotech necessarily.
Oh, no.
No.
We're all sort of prostitutes, you know. They'll do anything. If we get a call for a voice job or if it's on camera, it's ideal. Right now, I'm doing a play out in North Hollywood, and I'm doing it for nothing, and I'm a member of Equity. But Equity in Los Angeles lets you do that if your theater has 99 seats or less. Yes. Well, as I was telling somebody earlier, I co-starred in a picture with Kevin Costner when Kevin was about 12, I think. Well, no, he was a little older than that, but his first starring role, I co-starred with him. I killed him, as a matter of fact. I think he's got a lot of fans here. And my most recent one, which has yet to be released, I killed Ernest Borgnine in a picture called The Big Turnaround. Then I have another film called Young Lady Chatterley II, which you wouldn't take your children to see. But there again, I was the villain. It was a comedy, and there was a lot of flesh in it. I shared a dressing room with Adam West on that particular one. You've seen it.
And he was a villain. I've got a movie that's playing on Showtime right now called Amanda and the Alien. It's a sci-fi romantic comedy. I'm starring with Stacy Keach, Michael Dorn from Star Trek, and Nicole Eckert from Baywatch. And we shot that January, February of last year, and just premiered one of the Showtime original films on August 19th, and it's running now. But my first film was Slumber Party Massacre, written by Rita Mae Brown, directed by Amy Jones, who went on to direct Mystic Pizza, Made to Order. She wrote Indecent Proposal. It was a kind of a cult film. There were two sequels to that. I started in a film called Bikini Summer, and that's in your video store too. There was a sequel to that as well. Illegal Entry, Sorceress for Roger Corman, where I played half boy, half goat. We shot that in Mexico. Yeah, you know, like Mike says, we're whores. You know, you pay us, we'll go there, we'll do it. But that's the good part about acting too. It's just that you got to keep a momentum going. And I got a phone call just before I came down here. I'll be doing a on stage the role of Joseph, and Joseph, an amazing Technicolor coach for the Midwest tour. So I'm excited about that. That starts next year. I guess I'm on the same half goat, half man. I've been pretty fortunate as well. I've worked on, I guess in your video story you can still rent Casual Sex, which I had a fun little role in, which is not as bad a movie as it sounds. It's actually pretty entertaining. It was one of the first movies that Andrew Dice Clay was in, and he wasn't Dice at that time. He had no dice, and he's lost them again, I guess, apparently, because he's in the TV show. I worked on a film in the video stores right now called The Granny, with Stella Stevens. She Kills Me. And in that movie I have hair color like Sinbad's, the comedian. Kind of orange, Dennis Rodman kind of hair color, and a little goatee. And I did get killed, and it was fun. I worked on Babylon 5 that aired, like, somebody saw it a while back with the goatee as well. And I'm going to be working next week on a what's it called? Not The Usual Suspects. What? It's one of the reality shows. I can't think of the name of it. Unsolved Mysteries. I'll be working on that as a farmer. So yeah, we'll pick and choose a lot of different things. Usually, actually I just lied again. We don't pick and choose. We just take usually. Thank you. We'll take that.
You're right. Here comes two.
There they go.
Two others. Hi, Alexandra. I'm in love. This is Craig Snegoff and Alexandra Kenworthy.
I may be wrong, and I never am. I sense the presence of Zentradi in the vicinity. How about you?
I think the Zentradi was killed by Gremlins.
It's been a long, long time. I miss my Gremlins. As you said, I know Azonia.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Hello, it's very nice to be here this afternoon. I was Azonia and the Invid. Introduce yourself?
We've been talking.
Okay. What can we tell you that you haven't already heard so far, since we're so late?
Which Invid were you?
The Regess.
The Regess.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Wow. Thank you.
Even the Zentradi have problems with traffic. Anybody else have any questions, or they have answered everything? What can we tell you? There's a hand.
For repeating the question somebody else asked, have you ever been recognized, just somebody coming up to you and saying, oh yeah, I know your voice. That's you, from the series.
Generally not on the street. No. In gatherings like this, some people have said, did you work in such and such a film where I may have done one line? And they were right. Yeah, once in a while. It's very strange. I mean, some of the films we do large roles, it's easy. It's easy to recognize. Did you talk about,
We covered everything, Greg.
Wicked City. Did you mention Wicked City?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Has anybody here seen Wicked City?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you aware that this gentleman here is the little guy?
The little
nasty sex
there.
The little nasty sex maniac who just wants to get laid and can't think of anything else. That was him.
That's what done something like this.
That's Mr. Reynolds. Any other questions? Who we got? I saw hands before.
I'm not curious. What was your favorite scene playing Khyron?
Playing Khyron? Any scene where I got to kill my cronies. I don't recall them all now. The last one where he dies in his kamikaze attempt with Azonia is pretty cool. I mean, you've got to be fairly ill to yell victory as you're being fried. That was fun. You had one, you had a question.
Yeah, before we were talking about sometimes voice actors use different names for their parts. And I'm wondering if any of you used different names while you were working as a voice actor?
Yes, Greg Snow.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
Greg Snow is usually what I use. That's a name I used a lot on the radio, so I just continue to use that.
I use the name Nichols.
So it's something, you'll see a lot of names on Robotech that are not necessarily real names. They're just noms de plume if you were to write, and noms de scab if you're an actor. Another question. Please have more hands.
The people who did alien voices, in the post-production, I guess there's voice processing. Was that just applied after you did your voice work, or were you hearing
Often.
different things?
Awesome, yeah, it's usually applied afterwards. Yeah, it's, if you're talking and you're hearing a loop and you're hearing an effect, it may slow your reaction time down and then you start to lose the sync. So generally apply it afterwards.
Wasn't this on the name Greg Snow or the end credits of Robotech 2? Do you do voices in Robotech 2?
I recall doing something, but I honestly can't tell you what it was. Carl Masek may be able to help you out, but we're talking about films we did quite a few years ago, and we have not followed their fortunes as closely as you guys have. So, yes, I did. I just can't tell you what roles they were. World of the Talisman? I think it's released as Planet Busters, or Planet Buster. Yes, I did. I wrote it and directed it, and I can't remember what his name was. He's the guy who talks like this! The one with the eyes that pop out of his head and his jaw comes down about here. Whatever his name is. Yeah, it's a good film, actually. Very interesting film.
This is for Regess and / Azonia. Which character did you enjoy playing most?
Oh, I think possibly Azonia because I went down in flames with Khyron.
Not Regess though. Regess was pretty, the way she had control over all the things was pretty impressive.
Oh, I think it's very impressive. I do that in real life. I'm very impressed with myself.
That's Mike.
This is for everyone. Did you know that when you were doing your characters' voices and such, that they would have such an impact on us people who would watch this and be like, hey.
Not the faintest. We had no clue. We knew it was going to be a good series, but who knew it was, who knew it would be remembered after 10 years?
And really, that's one of the joys of acting, you know, to know that you did something and that you've been able to reach so many people, and it's an honor to be here, to have that validation that something we did 10 years ago has such a following. You know, I just hope and pray that stuff that we're doing today and last week has that kind of following. It's really an honor.
I have a question because I just find this absolutely fascinating. What was it about the series that just grabbed you? Did you answer this question before?
I can tell you that the intents of the story is so gripping that you can watch it over and over. And to this day, I haven't seen anything yet with the story so compelling.
Have you ever watched a soap opera?
Yeah.
well, this is a techno soap opera. I mean, it appeals to the senses of a generation where we're basically influenced by technology. We're all little technocrats, whether we have technology or not. So seeing something advance 20 years into the future, seeing things advance actually 50 years into the future is astounding to a 15-year-old. You know, it's astounding, and we're just like, when this came on the screen, I think at our age, we didn't have like Speed Race or anything like that. We had like Transformers. And when this came on the screen, this was the bomb. This like shook the world. There was not one kid in my class who didn't watch it.
To give you an idea of how really we didn't know what kind of an effect this would have, a number of us also directed, a number of the actors, and we were working on one. We were working at such an outrageous pace, working pace. We basically did a series in about half the time it normally should have taken. So there were all kinds of wild hours happening. We were all exhausted all the time. And oftentimes the script would get thrown into the works, and it wasn't really quite up to the proper quality, and so would have to be rewritten as we were in the studio. And Mike was working with something. He was trying to dump some dialogue. It wasn't working, and the dialogue didn't make sense, and it wasn't in sync, and he was getting angrier and angrier. And finally, he just took the script and heaped it on the ground and said, "Who wrote this goddamn two-bit piece of shit?" And a little voice from the background, it was the sound technician in the back, the recordist, said, "Mike, I think you did." And he picked up the script, looked at it, had his name on it. And to give him his due, he said, "Well, let's see what you learned from it." That has become a legend.
Sure. Thanks for sharing that.
I know you wanted me to.
I can say from at least my standpoint, when it first came out in '85, I caught it like halfway during the second generation. And at first it was like, guns and bullets and transforming mecha, and that's what captivated me, so I was like, Transformers. But then during the second series, when I finally was watching everybody, and what he was saying was a soap opera. I mean, I like those. Roy, I'm sorry, when you die, I cry. I cried, I was heavily pissed because you died.
So is he, because he only got 15 episodes out of it. He got into the whole thing.
You started getting into the characters, though, when you actually realized Khyron was, hey, I was in it for my own self. I don't care, kill him. And Louie, how your character was in the techno you're great, Dolza.
That's a good be a technology.
And even just herself, too. I mean, she was just ruthless. And I was reading the books and such. I know they didn't have any voices to it, but at the same time, you could put the voices in your head and you know what was going on. I think that's what everyone. First you know the actual people died, and you don't see that usually in cartoons.
Well, heroes died. I mean, leads died. That was the unusual thing. You didn't know one episode to the next who was going to live and who wasn't.
When you watch G.I. Joe, everyone still lived after they got shot.
Yeah, what a boy.
You watch Robotech.
He was dummy bullets, I hate that.
You watch Robotech, you saw Roy die, then you saw Ben die. And then you two died at the end, and we both
Yeah, but who cared?
Hey. Another question.
Another question.
Who's got a question?
Wait a minute.
I guess in regards to Khyron's relationship with Azonia, just what did she see in him anyway?
I wouldn't touch that.
I'm a mother. And Khyron is my son. And therefore, mother has to see something. Son, right? I don't think you got it. Hello?
She's not in real life.
No?
No, you still haven't got it. This lady really is my mother.
Oh, so she hooked you up at the park.
So now it gets really strange. And so we didn't have the roles together. I did it one day and she did the next day. There was no physical contact.
We were never in the room together. It was very intimate.
Does that answer your question? Probably not.
As much as he wants to know.
More than he wants to know. Way in the back there.
Yeah, did you do a few of your lines?
I doubt it.
I don't want to speak in strangled terms. And say down to my cronies, no, I doubt it.
Can you remember? Sorry, we get on the script, maybe we can do it.
I'd advise, how about if she says,
I knew somebody would remember something.
how about if she says, Invid shock troopers, eliminate them,
Invid shock troopers. Invid shock troopers. Eliminate them! Eliminate them!
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Say the line again?
For the glory of the Zentradi and Khyron.
For the glory of the Zentradi and Khyron!
Did any of you ever flub your lines?
Often. But you never know it. The miracle of tape. Yes, you do the line again and again and again, particularly when you work for someone as unpleasant as myself. It says, you do the line, no. You do the line again, no, it's late. Do the line again, no, it was early. No, again, no, it stinks, come on, you do better than that. They hate me. Yes, you flub it often until you get it right.
I never flunked. I go in and I do it once and I do it right.
Because she is the reason.
I am rude.
Yes.
Is this the first time you've like seen each other since the original show, or have you like worked together in the past?
Oh, no, we've done a lot of shows.
No, I mean.
Well, I'm familiar with this lady here. No, it's a fairly small group of actors, and we do the bulk of the cartoons. So you tend to bump into the same people again and again and again.
how was it working for Carl?
A lot of fun. He's very demanding, but his ideas are very clear. So if you're wrong, you know it. You're not confused. And he's a lot of fun to be with, Mike.
And he's very patient.
Maybe too patient.
I don't think I've ever seen Carl angry.
And he's standing right around the corner.
What do you mean? There he goes. Well, that's the lot. There's the man responsible. Invid shock troopers. Attack him! Attack him!
I'm gonna sit and listen.
That's what he always said. Come on, they've got to go there. Wait a minute.
Was Khyron's voice deliberately patterned after James Mason?
Actually, well, yes, obviously it was. It was around I remember, it was on the third episode, he popped up, and he wasn't cast or anything, we just saw him for the first time. And the voice just popped into my head. At one point in our relationship, I can't do that in front of this many people. It's a personal thing. We'll skip that one. I don't actually, the New Orleans, where he's sort of dreaming about her. Oh, that's towards the end there?
No, the very first the first episode. The first one, you have the locket in your hand.
It's a blank. I honestly don't remember that. And I know I said it a lot. Sorry, I can't help you on that one. I remember maybe one of the other guys remember. You remember it? You don't remember my lines, Mike? So, Roy? Sorry.
As voice actors for cartoons, I know if you're a comic book illustrator in a room full of real artists, like comic books, so as voice actors, you just take this like incredible, I do cartoons as opposed to, the real actors who do like serial voiceovers.
They're generally one and the same people.
I thought,
Everybody likes to do the cartoons because they're fun, generally speaking. But it's a pretty small group of folks who do it. They're not held in disregard, if any. Oftentimes they're held in a little higher regard. In awe, in some cases. Some cases. I mean, there are some people who, they're not human beings. They have no right to be that brilliant. The voices that they can come up with, the acting ability and all of that, there really a lot of them are just extraordinary.
Many big stars just love to get offered a cartoon, like what's his name,
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams. He did that Aladdin thing. Well, speaking of which, I did an Aladdin cartoon one time with Carradine, John Carradine, and we were both doing good big voices. Of course, this is really bigger than life. Wonderful, yeah, wonderful voice. He was doing the Grand Vizier, and I was doing the Genie of the Lamp. And it was one of those times when we were both in the studio at the same time, and he was saying something like, "Wind rise, blow and away," whatever, something like that.
Being John Garrity.
And,
He's just being John Garrity, doesn't matter what he's saying.
Yeah, and both of us are trying to outdo the other in big voice. And I'm talking about the genie that is holding the earth on his shoulders, and he's standing on a bull, who's standing on a rooster, who's standing on a fish who swims in the sea of eternity. And we're both back glancing at each other and going through all these lines. I glanced into the engineer's booth and he was gone. I said, "Wait a minute, John, what's going on here?" We looked into the booth and the guy was on the floor on his back, howling. And Carradine went back and he sat down and he said, "Well, young man, why don't you and I cut off the shit and get to work?" But a lot of big stars like that just love doing cartoons. Anyone?
is it hard getting jobs like that?
Extraordinarily.
Yes.
Because I noticed that you've been in a lot of animated movies like Megazone, Wicked City, Robotech, and is it really that hard?
Yeah, because the small group of people that are doing most of them, are there because they're good, not because they have a pretty face or they're somebody's son or daughter. Well, in my case. But they're very good, and so it's a pleasure calling these people. I mean, I'm fortunate to have that pleasure because I also direct. So I really don't like to have to teach acting, or teach dubbing, or teach reading English. So when I know that I'm going to call one of these people, I sort of take a deep breath and can relax. I know they're going to understand what the script is. They're going to look at the screen once or twice, and they're going to get it. So it's understandable that same people get called again and again and again, assuming their voices are right for the role. So unless somebody is just amazing, either has a huge range of voices, sees the sync perfectly, and it's hardly ever done before. Generally, the way to get in is, the way most of us actually got in was doing what are called walla sessions, which are group voices, crowds, stuff like that. And in the midst of those, there are usually one little bit roles that are one or two lines. And that's a way for a director to say, all right, do this guy. And you see immediately if they can come up with the energy, if they can
do the acting, that they can see the sync. And so you do a bunch of these sessions and you get to see what kind of voices somebody can do. His acting's good, he sees the sync, and you say, oh, well, I think he can handle a bigger role. And pretty much all of us started doing it that way, got to do the little voices, but not a lot. So it's a relatively small group of people, and we like going with the same people in because we know they will do a good job. That's why it's hard to get in. We don't want to see new people. Usually the time we have to do the job is pretty short.